right? So
Yes.
we have to read it. So who will read
Shall I
it?
read?
Oh
Shall
yes,
I read?
yeah, do that.
If this is a true account of dream experience, dreams can no longer be classified as a mere unreal figure of unreal things, temporarily imposed upon our half unconsciousness as a reality. The analogy therefore fails even as an illustrative support for the theory of the cosmic illusion. It may be said, however, that our dreams are not themselves realities, but only a transcript of reality, a system of symbol images, and our waking experience of the universe is similarly not a reality, but only a transcript of reality, a series or collection of symbol images. It is quite true that primarily we see the physical universe only through a system of images impressed or imposed on our senses, and so far the contention is justified. It may also be admitted that, in a certain sense, and from one viewpoint, our experiences and activities can be considered as symbols of a truth which our lives are trying to express, but at present only with a partial success and an imperfect coherence. If that were all, life might be described as a dream experience of self and things in consciousness of the infinite. But although our primary evidence of of the objects of the universe consists of a structure of sense images, these are completed, validated, set in order by an automatic intuition in the consciousness which immediately relates the universe with the thing imaged and gets the tangible experience of the object, so that we are not merely regarding or reading a translation or sense transcript of the reality, but looking through the sense image to the reality. This adequacy is amplified too by the action of a reason, which fathoms and understands the law of things sensed and can observe scrupulously the sense script and correct its errors. Therefore, we may conclude that we experience a real universe through our image the sense transcript by the aid of the intuition and the reason. An intuition which gives us the touch of things and a reason which investigates their truth by its conceptive knowledge. But we must note also that even if our image view of the universe, our sense transcript, is a system of symbol images and not an exact reproduction of a transcription, a literal translation, still a symbol is a notation of something that is that is a transcript of realities. Even if our images are incorrect, what they endeavors to image are realities, not illusions. When we see a tree or a stone or an animal, it is not a non-existent figure or hallucination that we are seeing. We may not be sure that the image is exact. We may concede that other sense might very well see it otherwise, but still there is something there that justifies the image, something with which it has more or less correspondence. But in the theory of illusion, the only reality is an indeterminable featureless pure existence, Brahman, and there is no possibility of its being translated or mistranslated into a system of symbol figures, for that could only be if this existence had something determinate, determining contents or some unmanifest truth of its being, which could be transcribed into the forms or names given to them by our consciousness. A pure indeterminable cannot be rendered by a transcript, a multitude of representative differentia, a crowd of symbols or images. For there is in it only a pure identity. There is nothing to transcribe, nothing to symbolize, nothing to image. Therefore, The dream analogy fails us altogether and is better put out of the way. It can always be used as a vivid metaphor of a certain attitude our mind can take towards its experiences, but it has no value for a metaphysical inquiry into the reality and fundamental significances or the origin of existence.
Okay. Very, we have to go into the detail because he's going into great detail to explain to us. What we will do, it's a biggish para. So we will first get the essence of what he's saying and then we will go into the details. So, but in other words, we'll give a summary of what he's saying and then we will discuss the details. It's very interesting what he's saying. So now he has, you remember what he's doing, he is describing, he is looking into the images that Shankara has given. Shankara has given that the only reality is the Brahman and that Brahman is featureless, but it is absolutely real. Featureless means you can't describe it in any way because it seems to be a blank, but it's a blank which contains all the potentiality. It's not a total blank. It's a blank which is full of all potentiality. And the physical world is unreal because that is we are not seeing the reality at all. That's what he's saying. So Sridhar is examining the image of the dream. You remember, I just briefly summarize for you Shankara's 4 or 5 images to show that the world is unreal. One is the dream reality. The dream, when you are dreaming, it is real to you. When you wake up, then it is unreal. It has disappeared. So this is one image that Shankara gives. The second image is the serpent and the rope, which is the more famous one. Okay. When you are walking at night, okay, in the dark, and suddenly your leg hits something, you feel that it's a snake, and you get frightened. It has a real reality for you. You get frightened. The daytime you come and see it's only a rope. Okay, so that you are completely misunderstood. So that is another image. The third image is the moon shining in troubled waters. There is only one moon, but you are seeing many reflections in the water. That's the seeing the many and thinking it is real, and seeing the one which is the reality up there, but you're not seeing it. Then the fourth image is the desert, okay? The mirage, if you want in French, the mirage in the desert. When the heat vibrations, even in Pondicherry, sometimes on a very hot day, you will see the vibrations on the street, on the black street, you will see ripples like that, like water. Okay? So you feel it is flowing water. And sometimes these ripples go up also, and so you feel there are trees. But you go near, there is nothing there. So that's another image which he gives. And the last image he gives is the seashell. The seashell, sometimes if you look at it, it feels like silver. It is a coating of silver. But when you see it, actually nothing. It's not silver at all. So these are the images. He is examining only the dream analogy and telling you that the dream and the process of dream, you go into the intraconscious and you see. It is another reality. It's not the physical reality, but it's another reality. It's like going from one room to another room. Just because you have gone from one room to another room, the former room that you were in, it doesn't become unreal. It's only a different room, that's all. Okay? So that's what it is. Now, I read out the summary and then we'll go into details. If our view, my view, okay, of dream is correct, then dream cannot be considered as unreal images of unreal things, which is what Mayavada seems to say. The world, according to illusionism, is pure illusion, corresponding to no reality at all. The analogy of dream, which compares self and reality to the worldly waking life, which is the illusory dream, fails completely. I might as well mention that there are 2 types of unrealities. One is you are seeing something, but actually there is nothing there. That's one type of reality. Okay. The other, one type of unreality. And the other one is that you are seeing something, but you are seeing something else. There is a tiger sitting there, but you are seeing it as a cat. What you are seeing is not the reality. So Sri Aurobindo will tell you that that is actually what happens. You are seeing there is you and there is your photograph. The world is only a photograph. It's not the reality of you. When you see the photograph, then it's not real, but it represents the reality that you are. So that's what he's going to explain in this paragraph. Okay. But if Mayavada were to say that dreams are not realities by themselves, but are images, symbol transcripts of actual realities, and if our waking world life is similarly nothing but symbols and transcripts of actual realities, then the comparison would be valid because all sense perceptions are interpretations of our brain to the sense data received by it. This is, we go on repeating, but it is something so important because we think that what I am seeing is the reality. Actually, you are not seeing the reality at all. What you are experiencing of the world is images in your mind. We have discussed this many times. The world becomes real to you through your senses, through the nerves carrying the sense data to the brain, and the brain telling you what you are seeing and what you are not seeing. It is an interpretation. If any of these three things fail, the world doesn't exist for you. If your senses are not there is no world for you. Number one. I mean, this is at the reality at the physical level. At the spiritual level, it is different. But in the physical level, if your senses are not there, the world doesn't exist for you. Then, if the nerves also get damaged, then again, the world doesn't exist for you. If all the nerves get damaged. And if the brain also says that I want to go on a holiday, I don't want to work, which is the silent mind, then also, then what happens? The sense data is going to the brain, but the brain is not responding and interpreting the images. Okay? Therefore, you see the field, you see the images, but they make no sense to you at all. This is the reality. So, now I continue with the summary. It can even be said that man's life and activities are symbols of truths that are attempting to represent imperfectly those truths as best as they can in earth condition. Because we are seeing only the forms, and the forms are only the representations of images, okay, just like the photographs. Everything that we are seeing is only photographs. So it is not the reality behind. That's what I'm saying. So we can say in a certain sense that our whole life is actually an unreality. But is it absolute unreality? That's what Sri is explaining. It's not absolute unreality because there is intuition and there is something. When I see a photograph of any of you, okay, I'm seeing a photograph of Yasmin. Does it mean that Yasmin doesn't exist? She exists, but through that photograph, I can picture to myself the reality. So that is what Sri is saying. The world is like that. It's not an absolute unreality, but it's an image of the reality. And through that image, you can, intuition gives you a glimpse. It may be an intuition that there is something real behind the form. You don't realize that unless you go to the second level of the spiritual planes of consciousness. And there again, you can see the physical world as absolutely unreal. It's misinterpretation again. But if you are in the cosmic consciousness, you see that the world is real, but full of only forms and photographs. That's what you see. When you go to the self, these three things are possible. You see the world as absolutely unreal, you interpret it like that. Or you can interpret it that it is real, but the world consists not of realities, but of only photographs, images. Okay? And behind the images, there is a truth. So that's what I'm saying. Now, if this were all, that means the world is absolutely unreal, only images, it could be said that man's life is a dream experience of the infinite self and its principles. But this is not the final truth, because our brain, no doubt, produces sense images only, but these are supplemented and validated by automatic intuition and reason. Intuition and reason correct the errors of the senses and relate the images to the realities. Through the photograph, I can realize that I can picture to myself and experience the reality behind the photograph. They represent. This is what Sandy is saying. So the world is not absolute unreality, it's an images of the realities. This means that through the image, we can see the reality corresponding to it. So we can assert that man sees the universe as images. We can say that. But through them, he sees also the reality imaged. Even if the image is an error, it is corrected by intuition and reason. Example, the rising sun. That's a very good example of what he's saying. You see the sun rising and you think that the sun is rising, but actually reason comes and corrects the error. So the sun is not rising, but it is correcting the error of the senses. So the theory of illusionism says that the universe is nothing but sense images or absolute unreality. But actually we are experiencing sense images that represent actual realities, not absolute non-existent things. Okay? The word used for this is the son of a barren mother. That's the image used in the Advaita philosophy, Shankara's image. The son of a barren mother. So a barren mother can never give reality. So what you are seeing cannot exist. Okay? But that's not true. You are seeing the image of something that exists. That's what Swami is saying. The theory of illusionism says that the only reality is the infinite self, and being featureless, it cannot be imaged or symbolized at all. That's it. Mayavada philosophy. The Mayavada philosophy says the reality is totally featureless. So if it is featureless and has no form, no shape, nothing, what is it going to image? The photograph is something which captures the features of your face and your body. But if the body itself and the feature is, you are featureless, okay? If Yasmin is someone who is absolutely without description possibly, how can there be a photograph? There can be no photograph of someone who doesn't have features. That's what illusionism says. Therefore, the world is absolute unreality. But Sriyanga doesn't agree with that. No? That's what he says. So, clear what he's saying? The metaphor of comparison of dream as illusion is loosely useful, but cannot serve as a metaphysical argument. That's what Sriyanga is saying. Okay? So, very clear what he's saying. The world is not absolutely unreal. It's only an image of realities. But that is partially true, therefore. So, just 1 second. Yeah. Metaphysical argument. Okay, so now we will start reading the nearing 8:15. We've got plenty of time, so we'll read. Important thing is to understand Srinivas's language. You know? So the way he uses language, then it becomes very useful to you. When someone else is using the same words, you understand what he's saying. So I go back to the beginning of the paragraph. Okay. My computer is saving what I missed this. Okay, so it's a very big paragraph. So I read each sentence. Let's see whether it is clear. If this is a true account of dream experience, what is it? That dream experience is usually either from the subconscious, which is real, or the intraconscious also, which is real, or it can go into the superconscious also, which is real, okay, but featureless. So if that is a true account of dream experience, dreams can no longer be classed as mere unreal figure of things, of unreal things. In other words, what you are seeing doesn't exist at all. So that is not valid. That's what Swami is saying. It is an image of real things. It's not an unreal figure of unreal things. It's an image of real things. There is, as I said, Yasmin's photograph doesn't represent nothing. It does represent Yasmin, who is the reality. That's what Swami is saying. Okay? But the world is, we are seeing the world only as photographs, not the realities. The realities we see when you go to the higher levels of consciousness. Second level and third level also. So, and these unreal things temporarily imposed upon our half consciousness as a reality. Why is he saying temporal? Temporarily, because when you go to the second level, you do see the reality, you see the Brahman, and you see the physical world is unreal. So temporal, temporary. Your ignorance is not permanent. Okay? That's what he's saying. So you see how each word you have to look carefully. Imposed upon our half consciousness as a reality. The analogy, therefore, fails even as an illustrative support for the theory of the cosmic illusion. Because the dream is not unreal, it is real. The subconscious is real, the inconscient is real, the intraconscient is real. Therefore, the image of Shankara that the dream is unreal is not true. That's what Sridhar is saying. He is not criticizing Shankara. He is saying that the image used does not represent the reality. The image used is wrong. But now an interesting question comes up. That which is featureless, can you ever give a symbol which is absolutely correct? The answer is very clearly no. Every image that you give, every example that you give, always has got some defects in it. But it does help to picture the truth. It does help. That's why we go on giving examples of things. Okay, so then I go to the next sentence. It may be said, however, that so Sridhar is now discussing, is the Mayavada philosophy absolutely unreal? Is Shankara absolutely unreal? It may be said, however, that our dreams are not themselves reality, but only a transcript of reality. There you are. Dreams also, not only the physical world, but even the dreams are only transcripts of realities. Okay? A system of symbol images. And our waking experience of the universe is similarly not a reality, but only a transcript of reality. It is what the mind is telling you. The senses which are imperfect are collecting data from the physical world and sending it to the brain. And the brain is telling you what you're seeing and not seeing. And that can be not correct. Somebody else may see it in a different way. Because you are colorblind, you will not see the same as somebody else will see. Okay. It's very interesting. By the way, I used to wonder how you know that someone is colorblind. It's very interesting. I don't know if you've seen that. But what they do is, let's take an image, okay? On the screen, you have a circle. And you put, okay, red flowers all around everywhere. Hundreds and hundreds of red flowers. And in the middle, okay, you put green flowers. Okay. Now, if that person is green blind, he will not see. He will insist that everything is red. It's a very interesting way of finding out whether you are really colorblind or not. So, I'm saying green, but usually we have one very famous example of colorblindness in ashram. That is that Bhatti. Okay, Bhatti Prabhakar Pantulu. So he is colorblind. He can't distinguish between brown and red. So it's very interesting.
What you are talking about is an absolute color blindness.
Yeah.
But there are many subtle forms of color blindness.
That's
In order to detect that, we have something known as Ishihara's charts.
That's
where
right.
the background is one color,
Yeah.
and supposing you have the number 3 and 8. Now, the colorblind person will read it as 3,
Yeah.
and a normal person will read it as 8, because parts of that number 8 are
Yeah.
put of a different color which he cannot see.
Yes.
So
That's right.
then we have various shades of color blindness.
That's right.
So
Gradation.
there are many methods of finding whether a person is colorblind, and what is his variety, and the uh, the density of the color blindness.
Yeah.
And 4% of the male population is colorblind, but 0.4% of females are colorblind. So
Oh.
colorblind is mainly a male disorder.
Oh. Okay. Right. So we go back to our text. That's right. You have given a more detailed explanation, and it's very interesting what you said. Okay. But that is how they discover the color blindness. It may be said that we read just now. So I read the sentence again. It may be said, however, that our dreams are not themselves realities, but only a transcript of reality, a system of symbol images. And our waking experience of the universe is similarly not a reality, but only a transcript of reality, a series of collection of symbol images. This is there is a famous well-known philosopher. His name is Gurdjieff. Okay? And he said his whole stress was what you are seeing as reality, and you think your waking consciousness is nothing but a sleep. And when you go to sleep, or rather you lose the consciousness of the physical world or consciousness of the waking self, then you are awake. See, that is his philosophy. So this is exactly what he's saying. We are seeing the physical world as symbol images, but we think they are real. Okay? It is quite true that primarily we see the physical universe only through a system of images impressed or imposed upon our senses. And so far, the contention is justified. Now, Sundar is going into great detail. These images can be impressed or imposed. Okay. In other words, when it is impressed, the background also is getting, the substance of your brain is getting, the image is being put on it. But it can also be imposed on it. Just like the images of a cinema are being not impressed but imposed on the screen. Okay? So you can see the difference with what he's saying. Both are possible. Some individuals it will be impressed, some individuals it will be imposed. Okay? So whenever Srinath is saying or and using other words, we have to try and understand what's the difference between the two. So very interesting. Impressed, the image actually changes the screen. So even when the image is removed and the projector is not projecting, you will see the image still on the screen. That would be impressed. But if it is imposed, the screen remains the screen, and only you are seeing the image. And as soon as the projector stops, the screen becomes white. So that's the difference between impressed and imposed on our senses. And so far, the contention is justified. It may also be admitted that in a certain sense and from one viewpoint, our experiences and activities can be considered as symbols of a truth which our lives are trying to express, but at present only with a partial success and imperfect coherence. So if that is true, then the whole world that we are seeing, if they are only images, our whole life also is only images and not absolute truth. So simply saying, yes, there's a truth to that. Okay. But there's another thing. If that were all, is it really that the physical world is only images? That's what Sandra is discussing now. Life might be described as a dream experience of self and things in the consciousness of the infinity. But although the primary evidence of the objects of the universe consists of a structure of sense images, these are completed, validated, set in order by an automatic intuition in the consciousness, which immediately relates the image with the thing imaged and gets a tangible experience of the object. So, the photograph is not absolute unreality. The photograph is a semi pointing to the reality. That's what Sandhi is saying. Okay? And you get it? And who helps with that? The reason helps with that. Reason and intuition. Man has reason and in other words, the animal which has no reason and no intuition, the animal is experiencing only images, but not man. Man is seeing the image, but behind the image, he is able to relate, however imperfectly, but he is able to relate the reality behind the form. Okay? But the real connection with the reality comes only at level 2, not at level 1. Level 1 is the ignorance, and level 2 is the spiritual planes of consciousness where you see the reality. And then you realize that the physical world is only forms. Okay? So, validated, set in order by an automatic intuition in the consciousness, which immediately relates the image with the thing image and gets a tangible experience of the object. So that we are not merely regarding or reading a translation or a sense transcript of the reality, but looking through the sense image to the reality. This is in man's condition. Through the photograph, we can see, we can relate it to the reality. You are not seeing the reality, but you can relate to it. This adequacy is amplified too by the action of a reason which fathoms and understands the law of things sensed and can observe scrupulously the sense transcript and correct its errors. Okay? That correction of errors, as I told you, the best example is Sri Aurobindo himself. He gives the example of the rising sun. Your sense knowledge is telling you that the sun is moving. But reason comes in and says, wait. Senses are giving you wrong information. Okay? But what is strange is that although science says that, yet it believes that the only reality is the physical world. They are materialists. Not all, but mostly. So that's what. So intuition and reason come and correct the sense errors. Therefore, we may conclude that we experience a real universe through our imaged sense transcripts by the aid of intuition and the reason. An intuition which gives us the touch of things and the reason which investigates the truth by its conceptive knowledge. The reason, intuition is giving you the touch of things, and reason is investigating the conceptive knowledge. That itself also is something that we need to. But we must note also that even if our image view of the universe, our sense transcript, is a system of symbol images and not an exact reproduction or transcription, a literal translation, still a symbol is a notation of something that is. There's a comma there, okay? So, symbol is a notation of something that is, that exists, a transcript of realities. Even, sorry, even if our images are incorrect, which is mostly true, okay? But what they endeavor to image are realities. Exactly the image of the example of the photograph and the person behind the photograph, okay? So, that helps a lot to understand what he's saying. Even if our images are incorrect, what they endeavor to image are realities, not illusions. When we see a tree or a stone or an animal, it is not a non-existent figure, a hallucination that we are seeing. We may not be sure that the image is exact. We may concede that other sense might very well see it otherwise. This is what I meant by the color blindness issue. Okay? What I am seeing, the others are not seeing the same thing because it's only a transcript. The transcript can be in color, it can be in black and white, it can be even distorted, and the image can be an unfocused one. There can be so many differences. Okay, it's not that every time it's the same. We may conceive that other sense might very well see it otherwise, but still there is something there that justifies the image, something with which it has more or less correspondence. There, again, he is saying more or less correspondence. Vaguely we feel that there is a reality behind the phenomenon. But in the theory of illusion, the only reality is an indeterminable, featureless, pure existence. He is now talking of Mayavada and the Buddhist philosophy. They say that the reality Brahman is featureless and indeterminable. So you can neither think of it, nor can you photograph it, nor can you describe it in any way. And if you can't describe it in any way, how can there be an image? How can there be a photograph of something non-existent? That's exactly what he's saying. Therefore, the world is not absolutely unreal. The images have something. But the Mayavadans are saying the only reality is the Brahman, which is featureless. Therefore, they have to conclude that the physical world is totally unreal because it cannot be imaged. Okay. So, and there is no possibility of it being translated or mistranslated into a symbol figure, into a system of symbol figure. For that could only be if this existence has some determinate contents. In other words, features. Determinate contents means features. Color, form, shape, size, okay, and weight, and some unmanifested truths of its being, which could be transcribed into the forms or names given to them by our consciousness. A pure indeterminable cannot be rendered by a transcript. A multitude of representative differentiate, a crowd of symbols or images. For there is in it only a pure identity. A pure identity is oneness. Okay? A oneness which is free of features. Therefore, there is nothing to transcribe, nothing to symbolize, nothing to image. Therefore, the dream analogy fails us altogether and it is better put out of the way. Okay? Don't take that as an absolute reality. Yet, Srinivasa says, it can always be used as a vivid metaphor of a certain attitude our mind can take towards its experiences. But it has no value for a metaphysical inquiry into the reality and fundamental significances of the origin of existence. In other words, the physical world is unreal in a certain sense, but it is not total unreality. It's a representation. It's a photograph of reality. And you are seeing only the photograph and you are thinking it is real. Partially you are right because you are being able to imagine the reality behind the photograph. That's what it is. Okay? So, we have done only one para, but you can see how subtle is the descriptions. This is the Sridhar's description of the hallucination and the images. So it is 8:34, so we have to stop here today. Next time, if we take up the analogy of hallucination, Smriti will make a transcription. She will put it on the. Okay, just a few words.
Yes.
All right. So, au revoir, everybody, and have a nice Ganesh day. Okay. Ganesh
Merci
is,
Thank you.
beaucoup.
yeah, he is not only a god of wealth, but he is also a Vigneshwara. He is the one who removes all obstacles from your path. So, you can, and mother said that he is my son. Okay.
Oh,
So Ganesh is Parvati's son, Parvati and Shiva. And so actually mother had the experience of Ganesh coming to her in that same form that he pictured in, like the elephant head. So she had a very interesting experience with Ganesh. We'll discuss that next time. Okay. Au revoir, everybody.
Merci beaucoup.
thank you, Angada.